Grand Rising, and welcome to another segment of CLG Viewpoint. Welcome to all my beautiful friends and beautiful souls of light. It's such an honor and privilege to have you here with CLG Viewpoint, and I am Cindy Lorraine Grace. Today is Thursday, April 24th, 2025. And under natural law in the Kingdom of Canada, it is Divina Vita, divine life. Day 23, year 0035. Today we will be covering the Royal Canadian Air Force. International news. Fully import substituted Russian Superjet makes first test flight. On to local news. BC invests $11 million on value-added lumber manufacturing amid U.S. uncertainty. Historic businesses along Vancouver's Hastings Street go up in flames. And 400 Canadian Armed Forces members will be in Ottawa area this weekend. And on to the video. The Canadian Royal Canadian Air Force. my personal thoughts. I am so honored to have presented this video of our men and women who serve the Royal Canadian Air Force. Thank you to you all for your service. And now on to international news. Fully import substituted Russian Superjet makes first test flight. The program to replace all foreign systems on the aircraft is nearing completion, state-owned corporation Rostec has said. RT News, April 23rd, 2025. The latest prototype of Russia's new SJ-100 Superjet airliner, built entirely from domestically produced components, has successfully completed its first test flight. State-owned defense conglomerate Rostec has announced the program to replace all Western-made parts on the regional passenger aircraft. It was launched in response to the sweeping sanctions imposed Russia's aviation industry by the US and EU after the escalation of the Ukraine conflict in 2022. The third prototype of the Superjet took to the skies in the city of Kamolsk-on-Amur in Russia's Far East, Rostec said in a statement on Wednesday. During the test, a fully import substituted plane demonstrated good controllability and stability in the air, the statement read. All Russian-made systems on the aircraft operated consistently, it added. According to Rostec, the 40-minute flight took place at an altitude of about 3,000 meters. The plane, equipped with Russian PD-8 engines, developed by the United Engine Corporation, reached a speed of up to 500 kilometers per hour. The program of import substitution in relation to the Superjet aircraft has entered the home stretch. The Rostec conglomerate has done a massive job. About 40 foreign systems and units have been replaced on the airliner, including the most important component, the engines. Vladimir Otakov, Rostec's first deputy general director, said. The first prototype of the SJ-100, mostly built with domestically produced components and equipped with Russian-French SAM-146 engines, began testing in 2024. This March, a version of the plane with Russian PD-8 engines got off the ground. United Engine Corporation CEO Valdem Badka called the Superjet test flight a historical event that will become an important step towards strengthening the technological independence of our country and make a significant contribution to the development of the domestic aircraft manufacturing industry. According to Badka, certification tests of the Superjet are expected to be completed by the end of the year, meaning deliveries of the aircraft to Russian carriers could begin in 2026. Now on to a very short video of the Russian plane jet. My personal thoughts. Fantastic news that all the components that were used in the building of the SJ-100 Superjet airline was entirely domestically made. following the decree under natural law. Local news. BC invests $11 million in value-added lumber manufacturing amid U.S. uncertainty, by the Canadian Press, published April 23, 2025. The British Columbia government is investing up to $11 million toward 4 projects in the province aimed at boosting the local mass timber manufacturing sector. Jobs and Economic Development Minister Diana Gibson says in a statement that the funding comes at a time when government investment is needed to strengthen homegrown BC companies in the forestry sector that provide value-added manufacturing for the province's lumber supply. Gibson says the funding also creates more than 100 jobs in several regions, while securing employment for hundreds more in the industry. Among the projects receiving funding is Nelson-based Spearhead Timberworks, which will get up to $7.5 million to help build a new production facility for curved, laminated timber, bonding layers of wood to create large, durable structural components for buildings. In Castlegar, Mercer Celgar Limited Partnership, a craft pulp mill, will receive as much as $1.75 million to modernize its log lines and install equipment, while Penticton's Grade-Back Construction will get about $235,000 to renovate a former mill site as it diversifies into prefabricated housing construction. Another project receiving the funding is Langley-based construction plywood manufacturer Westlam Industries, which will get $1.5 million for a new plant and automated equipment to increase production for building local housing and commercial structures. The Spearhead investment is expected to create more than 60 jobs, while the Westlam funding may mean hiring up to 46 more workers, the province says. We're working alongside industry to build a stronger, more resilient economy that works better for people and communities, Gibson says. The province says the new facility would allow Spearhead to make high complexity, high value mass timber construction components that would boost the company's ability to compete for business internationally. The funding is being administered through the Provincial Manufacturing Jobs Fund, aimed at helping local companies grow and create more made in BC products. The province says nearly a quarter of all BC wood product makers have applied for funding through the program. The investment comes at a time of growing uncertainty facing BC's lumber industry, where U.S. President Donald Trump wants to boost American lumber production and has directed investigators to look into the potential harms of importing Canadian lumber. West Fraser Timber President Sean McLaren has said that demand on Canadian lumber could be hampered by the potential inflationary effects of tariffs imposed by the United States. Personal thoughts. Financial aid and investing into the manufacturing sector of BC comes under the decrees of natural law. Historical businesses along Vancouver's Hastings Street go up in flames. Global News, written by Amy Judd, posted April 23, 2025. Some historical businesses along Hastings Street in Vancouver went up in flames on Wednesday morning. Vancouver Fire and Rescue Services was called to the Hastings Sunrise neighborhood around 4 a.m. after reports of a structure fire on East Hastings near Garden Drive. More than 40 firefighters responded to the blaze. Upon arrival, the fire was growing extensively and rapidly from structures into adjacent properties. Matthew Trudeau, the public information officer with Vancouver Fire and Rescue Services, told Global News. He said 3 businesses are affected and 7 people have been displaced. These are older structures that are wood. A lot of them have void spaces inside. Smoke could be smelled across the city, and Trudeau said people should keep their windows and doors closed. Hastings Street is closed between Nanaimo Street and Lakewood Drive. The cause of the fire is still under investigation. Tom Fredericks, the creative director of Wolford and Company, formerly known as Dayton Boots, said he is mostly worried about his staff members if they have to close for a while. It's a historic building. It's been operating for 75 years, so there's a lot of equipment in there that's probably irreplaceable, he said. Obviously, it is wet, so there's a lot of rebuilding to do. Fredericks said there is a lot of wood inside the building, describing it as a tinder box. Dayton Boots has operated its East Vancouver factory store since 1946. There is deep history and involvement with the community with Dayton and now Wolford, Fredericks added. Unfortunately, this happened and will have to rebuild. The fire appears to have damaged the Indian chef's restaurant and Windsor Meats. Now on to the video.
Firefighters are responding to a fire that is affecting a number of businesses in the Hastings Sunrise neighborhood.
Crews responded to a report after 4 o'clock this morning of a structure fire in East Hastings near Garden Drive. Global News chopper footage of the scene shows flames coming out of the roof of the building. More than 40 firefighters are on the scene working to prevent the blaze from spreading to neighboring buildings. At least 3 businesses have been impacted by the fire, with 2 suffering extensive damage. Fire crews are also receiving multiple reports of a smell of smoke right across the city.
If you smell smoke, you can try keeping your windows closed or shut fans off inside that are bringing potentially smoke inside, especially in kind of Strathcona where the wind is going to right now. People will definitely smell that accurate smell of smoke in the air. I know it's been into Mount Pleasant and farther in Limerick Village where people can smell smoke across the city. So close doors and windows.
Hastings is closed in both directions from Nanaimo to Lakewood. There are no reports of any injuries, and the cause is under investigation.
My personal thoughts. So fortunate no one was hurt due to this horrendous fire. But there needs to be a full investigation under natural law. And so it is. 400 Canadian Armed Forces. Yes, 400 Canadian Armed Forces members will be in Ottawa area this weekend. City News, written by Natasha O'Neill, April 23rd, 2025. A huge training exercise is being conducted by hundreds of Canadian Armed Forces personnel this weekend near Ottawa. The emergency response exercise partners with local agencies in Cornwall and the United Counties of Stormont, Dundas, and Glengarry. It will be held April 25th to 27th, and it's called Trillium Venture, with members across Ontario involved. According to a press release from the CAF, about 1,500 members are participating across the province, and around 400 of them will be in the East region. Personnel from the Canadian Army, Canadian Air Force, and the Canadian Navy are taking part. CAF members and assets will respond to a simulated major air disaster and prepare a unified response with local, regional, and other partners in the community, including the Ontario Provincial Police, the OPP, and others, the statement reads. It is possible members of the public will see increased military vehicles on the roads, in the water, and in the air over the weekend. Specifically, a larger presence will be seen around Long Sault Parkway and airspace across the National Capital Region. Highway 138 and 2 are expected to have increased traffic leading up to the event and during the weekend. No weapons or ammunition will be used in the exercise. Local emergency responders and governments are included in the venture. A campground located along the St. Lawrence River will be used to host people and equipment. This important training supports year-round preparations for emergencies in Canadian communities, including natural disasters like flooding and wildfires, as our members maintain readiness to deploy in response to requests for assistance and to serve alongside community members and other first responders, CAF said. My personal thoughts. A huge thank you to the Canadian Armed Forces and local emergency responders, the Canadian Navy and Army, for doing their due diligence in taking the appropriate action to implement the emergency response training in our Canadian communities, keeping our communities safe. I am Cindy Lorraine Grace of CLG Viewpoint, and I thank you so much from the bottom of my heart. If you feel compelled to, please share this forum. Thank you for sharing, and thank you for being here today. May you have a day filled with love, light, joy, and smiles. Each moment is truly a blessing. And I am so honored and grateful to be a part of your life through this time. Now on to the video. 8 acupressure points to treat body pain and aches. See you on Divina Vita, Divine Life, day 25, year 0035. That is Friday, April the 25th, 2025. And thank you again until we meet again.